Happy Thursday, friends. Welcome back to another edition of Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. Tonight's another red. Here we go. Who is joining us tonight? Ooh, fascinating. Wow, that's a different smell. Fairly unique. Wow, it's kind of vermouthy and herbal and floral. So fascinating. Good evening, one and all, who's already joining in to the program on this beautiful May night, the last of this month, a crazy busy month here at the restaurant, which has been great. And thank you all for your continued support. It's been just tremendous. Thank you. Verses are in tonight. That's fantastic. Wow, this is really expressive nose. We'll get into that in just a minute, as we're joined by a few other folks. I can see that a few are watching, but not yet chiming in. We are in the midst of this surge of dining public. It seems like we've had the consistent support of many of you, which has been wonderful. But with DC opening and with many folks getting shots, and then the governor deciding that it's okay to begin to kind of lessen some of the restrictions, it's a unique time. It's fascinating these past month and a half or so, in context of the last year and a half, where we have had more folks in the last month and a half coming out for the first time in a year and a half. It's pretty special. So we're in a fortunate place to be able to greet so many. Tonight we've got, of course, Susan joining us, which is great. And Jan, you had a burger here from here today? That's wonderful. Thank you. I was in meetings all day, so I'm sorry if I missed you. But Trish and Andy and Kathy are here, so it is a night that we can taste wine, because every night that we taste wine, they've been with us, which has been wonderful. Thank you for that. And Susan's agreeing with me about the nose. Wow, it is just super expressive. And Melissa is here with us tonight too. Glad to have you back too. Thank you. Wow. Gosh. It's very expressive, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. And so we're gonna have to work on this one together. Last week was a wonderful example of our hive mind coming together and accomplishing something that I might have gotten closer to, but I certainly did better with everybody's help last week. And it kind of forced me to consider more about whether I was heading sort of down an Australian route, and drove me back toward Chile based on your comments. And so I've said this many times to many guests who ask about this program and what we're doing here, and about my particular, or lack thereof, proficiency in tasting wines. And I said, well, I'm really good when it comes to being able to taste with 30 to 60 of my closest friends, because as a collective, we do a tremendous job. And having a chance to taste wines now, occasionally, less so throughout the week, but occasionally somebody gives me one blind, and I'm not as good without you. So happy to be with you tonight and doing this again. Jen, you're here. Great. Thank you so much. And with Matthew, he's back from Honduras. Well, welcome back, sir. Welcome back stateside and to this wine tasting. And Candy and Kevin and Kathy are joining us tonight. That's awesome. Hello to you. Hi to Jan Nelson. Man, this is something special. Unique. And that's the fun part about this, for sure, that Tony and Julie have been picking some fantastic, fascinating wines. Although I get to turn the tables next week, and my daughter has a dance recital on Thursday that I'm going to be able to catch, and I'm putting Tony in the hot seat, and I've picked a lovely wine for all of you to taste and for him to try to figure out with you. So that'll be a lot of fun. McCarty's are here tonight. Thank you so much, John and Ann, for joining. And Randall, you're here, man. Good job, buddy. Randall makes, his partner make with Allegra Hill Cakes some of the tastiest cakes, and the cakes that we feature for special occasions here. So if you're ever here and are in desire of a cake to add to your celebration, please let us know. They're the guys we turn to help us with that. And frankly, if you need a cake just in general, they make some lovely cakes, and we'd be happy to put you in contact with them if it's for an event that you're having somewhere else. So, Kimberly, you're saying it smells like slate, which is a good prompt to get back to the wine. Yeah, slate. So kind of a hot, warm rock element. There's that blue slatey note that sometimes you pick up in Riesling too. There is sort of a fresh sawn wood nose. There's this botanical note. There's like a vermouthy quality, a sweet vermouth quality. Tons of other floral notes. There's a rosemary medicinal note too behind it. Wow, it is plum, Susan. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is like normally we would start with something visual and talk about the appearance, but the wine has jumped out of the glass literally into the nasal passages and makes for something that is undeniably pronounced. It smells a little bit like roasted peanuts and cocoa. Wow. But yes, Kathy, you're saying it smells more like brick to you as opposed to slate. So there's a bricky element, dark garnet, so woody, mineral, yes. Man, I just had, for my birthday, I was given some cookies from Need Wine over in Middleburg, and they're doing a great job, of course. Talk about someone who knows wine over there, Jared Slip, Master Sommelier, who's running a cool pizza offering, and he makes these Swiss chocolate and Virginia peanut cookies. And that was a little flashback to that, because the peanuts themselves are roasted and salty. I get a bit of that note here. Kathy Lang-Wiedemann is picking up some balsamic notes, roasted tomatoes, herbs, black cherries, dried rose petals, smoke. Robert's definitely getting over that cocoa. Woodsy and even earthy for Jan. Yeah, I agree, 100%. So a little bit, we had a note or two about the appearance, but what are you seeing color-wise? Is this clear, hazy? And is it pale, medium, deep in intensity? Is it purple, ruby, tawny? What are you seeing? And what do those things tell you about potential varietals, right? So if it's something that has sort of a purplish color, we're thinking about one type of varietal. If it's something that has sort of a ruby color, we're thinking about another potential series of varietals. And if it has something tawnied about it, then it might be a number of different varietals crossing purple and ruby, but they might have some age on them. And so it tells you a few things. So a medium garnet with a little bit of a deeper quality for Jan. Jan, that deeper quality, like if you can see through it, I don't know if it's as deep, and I can kind of see through it. So it gives me, I can get the lines or the outline of some words on my page. So, but if I couldn't read that, I would go deep, but I can kind of read it. So it's probably more medium. And Candy's picking up a garnet color. Very dark for you, Candy? Maybe it's lighting. I don't know, because mine's not that deep and that dark. I can see right through it. So I would put it at more medium. And Jen, you're picking up a little sediment, huh? I did not get any sediment either, but maybe the bottle was sitting, my bottle was sitting up for a bit. Maybe there's a little bit of sediment and it just got jostled in yours. I don't know. So, and more purplish to you. This is, I'm more in the reddish color. So that's, our eyes see certain things, and then the environment is hugely important. So if it's a darker environment, or if you have a darker surface underneath what you're looking at or through which you're looking towards, it can make for a different impression. So, with that being said, the wide spectrum, if you saw something that was garnet ruby, and then you said, I think this is for sure Petit Verdot, there's kind of a disconnect there, because Petit Verdot would be more purplish, generally speaking. It would give you more of that purple note. You said this is absolutely purple through and through, and I think it's Pinot Noir. There's a disconnect there. The color doesn't necessarily match the actual varietal you're talking about. So that's what we're trying to do with a visual. We're trying to get some guideposts set up to help us, lead us toward an actual identification. Very rarely would the actual appearance and the color in particular dictate for you what wine it might be. There are occasions where that happens. Nebbiolo kind of is one of those grapes that seems like if you have that sort of see-through element, then you have this intensity of tannin that you might be right along the line of Nebbiolo, for example. But by and large, I wouldn't rush to a firm judgment just based on the appearance, but it definitely informs so much about what you're doing just by looking at it. So how about the body? Jen, okay, so maybe it could be a little bit of a suspended CO2 in it that just looks like sediment, and then it blows off as it aerates and the oxygen gets into it, and that CO2 gets a chance to escape from the bottle. It's sort of the sleepy, like the wine wiping the sleep out of its eyes. It just needed to wake up a little bit, and it's good to go. And so, what about the appearance of its structure? Is this a fairly rich wine? Is it a robust wine from the formation of its legs, the tears that are forming and running down? What do you see? Yeah, they're forming pretty good. This is a moderate weighted alcohol, right? It has some slow moving tears that are pretty well delineated. So we're for sure, I think, in the 13 plus range, 13.5. Yeah, this is something that medium bodied, medium plus bodied, maybe. Certainly based on some of the color, for some of you for sure being so deep and intense. Even with it being more moderate for on my side of things, as I'm assessing it, I think we're looking at a moderate to moderate plus wine. Again, guideposts. Yeah, I agree, Kathy. This is really fascinating wine because it keeps just changing in the nose, and wow. I mean, I have, whenever I smell something that's kind of, that has that sort of vermouth element to it, I'm just reminded of Marcus Goodfellow in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, who said that was one of his major goals in making a Pinot Noir from the Willamette, is he wants it to taste essentially like a Negroni. He wants it to have that vermouthy element to it and some of the gin botanical. And so I smell that here. I don't know that we're dealing with Pinot Noir here in terms of the varietal. I don't think so. And if the bottle's any indication, the shape of it, it would be no. But that's one varietal I think of vermouth. I think of perhaps like Carignan, Senso, things of that sort being a potential option. Sometimes you get some of that that herbaceous element, that garrigue quality that can come from the southern part of France, or potentially, excuse me, elsewhere. But we've got a lot of that cocoa going on again too. So there's a whole bunch going on here. Let's taste this. Jan, you're picking up mint. Oh, interesting. Is that on the palate, Jan, or have you tasted it already, or is that just in the nose? Janice Burse, I should say, as she's known there. But there are two Jans. The Jans that got a chance to know each other and become friends by way of these tastings. And so there's Jan Nelson and Jan Burse. Let's see, and then there's Jen. And so we've got the Jans and the Jens, and the litany of Chris's spelled all kinds of ways. And so it's a great group of like-minded and somewhat similar named people. So peppermint patty. There's that mintiness and that cocoa again, or that chocolate element for Jan. Ooh. Wow. First sip for me. How about for all of you? It's very dry. That tannin wins. And yes, you're right, Candy. We have only one Candy. That's true. And only one Neal, to my knowledge, too. So the nose and the aromatics of this are so expressive, and they seem to me, at least in the first sip, and I'm about to go back for more, completely shut down by the structure of the wine. Just tannin all throughout. Yeah. Kathy's saying that it's kind of got a medium body, which I agree with, a medium or medium high acidity, and a medium high tannin. Yeah. Jan Nelson's picking up a tart cherry taste. That also, guys, we're kind of describing a little bit of Nebbiolo here. So maybe. Woo. Yeah, right here. But super powdery, super fine tannin. We've talked about this before. Some tannins are chalky, so thus kind of powdery. Some tannins are chunky. They are chewy. You have to kind of work your way through them. Some tannins are long and silky. They just sort of cruise over your palate, and they're definitely pronounced, but they're there, and they're juicy. Some tannins have this just sort of cotton ball sensation where they expand in the mouth and dry you out. Kimberly's picking up a little bit of a burnt taste. Yeah, this is a very, very savory, savory quality of a wine. Like the fruit here is tart or even non-existent on the palate in a lot of ways, and then there's the savory notes, and there's the confection notes that are definitely on the more savory side of things. So Kathy's saying she's not leaning toward Nebbiolo, but on the dark side for that. But she's leaning Italy. So we just recently had Aglianico, which would be another bigger red. We could be tasting Dolcetto, for example. That has a good deal of tannin and is oftentimes something that grows in the realm of where you would find Nebbiolo too. And so some of those profiles being there. Susan, thank you. You're kind of verifying for me my own experience, and so I'm looking forward, per your note, that it will soften in time. The tannins for her dropped as it opened, but the first experience made her want to brush her teeth. I understand that. Yeah, there's almost like a burnt rind taste, Kimberly. I hear you there for sure, kind of that burnt orange rind. Kathy's asking about Sangiovese. I don't think it's too tannic necessarily for some Sangiovese, especially some Sangiovese that is more quality or Reserva. I think you'd get a little bit more fleshiness to the wine overall. Maybe. We just had that Chianti Classico Reserva. That was awesome. Berardino, that was nice. We were all thinking potentially Sangiovese or Nebbiolo in that realm too. And so it didn't necessarily showcase 100% sort of that voluptuous, velvety quality of Sangiovese that is in comparison to some iterations of Nebbiolo. So it could be, I mean, could we be drinking Brunello? Youthful perhaps. I would think we would get a little bit more flesh on the bones of this. So, and Kimberly, 100% exact, I was thinking the same note, and you just exactly put your finger on it, that this is sort of citrusy, but that you might torch a touch or just run over a flame in the process of making a cocktail. And yeah, it has that essential oil element of it, but it's been expressed through kind of a flame. Candy's picking up some salinity. What other varietals could this be? Places could it be from? If it's from Italy, let's talk about that for a while, just because we're sitting on it. We talked about Sangiovese and Nebbiolo, Dolcetto. Barbera is another grape that you could talk about, but I don't know that it would have this much tannin. Someone threw out, I think Susan maybe threw out plum earlier, and plum's a great indicator usually for something Merlot based. You could be talking about Merlot, say from the Alto Adige, from Friuli, certainly from Tuscany. Could it be a blend along those lines? Jan's asking about Tempranillo. Maybe. We could be looking at that. I haven't experienced Tempranillo with this kind of level of floral notes before, but there are many firsts for me in the world of wine, and that would be a possibility. I think we would get a little darker color, but not necessarily. I mean, some of you are seeing purple, right? There's a little now. I'm looking at it. Well, I'm looking at it against a blue background of a book, and that's where it turned purple. So maybe. Could we be in Spain? Could we be in Portugal? Could we be... Could we be somewhere Eastern Europe? Could we be Mediterranean in the way of a Greek red? I don't know. It's got a lot of tannin and not a lot of body, right? So this is kind of a thicker skinned grape. Excuse me. It's a thinner skinned grape that might necessarily give you some tannin structure to it. And that it's not so ripe, so it's not super warm, because we're not getting a ton of alcohol, nor are we getting sort of a ton of that extraction quality to this wine that would give us some more opulent, ripe, fresh fruit into candied fruit, into cooked fruit, sugared fruit. It's not there. So there's a cool element to this, but then a full form of tannin. And the Swanbergs, Jeff and or Adrian, are thinking less about Italy and more about the New World. Where would you go in the New World, guys? Mm. I don't often find that tannin structure in the New World. So what are you thinking? And the acid element. It's definitely high acid, high tannin, still salivating post the experience. I would think this is a relatively youthful wine. And there's a little bit of variation on the rim with that kind of watery meniscus, that watery rim that's just around the edge that would indicate a little higher alcohol than is here. So maybe I'm just not perceiving it as much, but I'm not getting a lot of burn. Any fruit quality still coming from or coming out in this for anybody? We had cherry, a little bit of plum. Any evolution of that character as we're at 20 minutes here, 21 minutes? Candy thinks, Kevin thinks, by way of Candy, that we're in Italy. The McCartys are thinking the same thing. So we're definitely not all together on this one. And that's okay. That's kind of good usually in terms of us helping figure that out. Yeah, we have got a lot of ladies tonight. Yes, Sharon. That's true. My fortune there. Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. Kathy's throwing that out there. Another Italian varietal. So could be right. A little bit lighter, typically, not necessarily as rich and robust, but I'm not sure I've had a Montepulciano that has this level of tannin. There's a rusticity to it, and Montepulciano can certainly have some structure to it. Where else am I missing, guys? There's plenty of other varietals in Italy. But I like the idea that we're kind of further down on the boot, and even like the idea that it has some of that maritime influence. There was a salty note earlier, right? It's that maritime influence, sea influence that is cooling the climate, so it's not ripening super fast, but it's got maybe some kind of thicker skin to deal with the sunshine from being more Mediterranean in its approach, but it's not getting super ripe. Sagrantino is a really cool idea, Kathy. That's got a little more tannin to it. It's almost island-like, it's definitely in the water in a way. Jan's picking up some fig in relation to my question. So some riper fruit that's punching through a touch now. There's a tension to this wine. Nothing about it is really easy. And Anne is saying she likes the idea of Sagrantino. I do too, as an idea for sure. But I haven't had a lot of experience with Sagrantino, right? But if I'm getting closer to a profile for this, it's not super high elevation necessarily. It's not. It's got a coastal element. It's got some sea influence. It's got some relative warmth, but the varietal is thinner skinned, but tough. So kind of like Nebbiolo, but it has, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of this skin that's meant to save it from the sun, and it's provided itself with the ability to not get burnt, but it's not also super ripe, and so it stays kind of aggressive in a way. It's definitely not an appeasing, inviting wine. It has an aggression to it that is not a bad thing, just a way to describe it. These are the other wines that are super easygoing and fun and festive. This takes a bit more doing. So Swanberg, Jeff sends Australian Shiraz. And I thought that too, from the way we were talking about the wine in the nose and the initial outset, especially when Jan put out the idea kind of that mint, peppermint patty kind of element. So you have cocoa and mint, that sort of eucalyptus-y element that could be coming from Australia. But I don't usually get the tannins like this from there. So this could be, maybe a Shiraz blend. A Shiraz from a cooler site in Australia, there's just that medicinal note to it that just kind of, for me, harkens back more toward the Mediterranean. Jan, thank you for that one. Pinotage. And Kimberly's just asking the same thing, so you guys are on the same wavelength. What does South African similar varietal profile look like? And I said earlier, seeing Senso, Carignan, Senso, and Pinot Noir are a cross to make Pinotage, right? So you have some of that potential here. Senso gives you that sinewy tannin. And I walked right away from Senso after saying that, didn't I? Not to consider anything else. So South Africa, that is interesting, right? Because it gives us some of those characteristics. It gives us potential sea influence. I'm not getting a whole bunch of burnt rubber. Sometimes you get that from Pinotage. This could be a really lovely Pinotage, and I shouldn't say that Pinotages with burnt rubber aren't lovely, but are you picking up a little pepperiness now, Kimberly? She's saying that's interesting. So Shiraz Syrah with that pepper element could be interesting. Could be South Africa. I didn't even consider that for a point, but I think there's something to think about there for sure. Kimberly's getting a bunch of black pepper. Sharon and the Swanbergs like the Australian Shiraz idea. The fruit's sort of coming back a little bit. Yeah, it's there. I mean, you could make an argument. I think you'd get more purplish, darkish, and more fleshier wine if we were talking about Australia Shiraz. But I'm not saying that there's enough reasons to say that it's interesting and compelling. Kathy, you've had yours open for an hour now? That's cool, because 25 minutes in, 27 minutes in, this is a wine that is starting to showcase more, and it's getting more interesting. I think this is a wine that needs a minute in the glass, and certainly maybe even would have benefited from a decanting. Certainly to soften some of those tannins and allow the rest of it to kind of come out. It's still maintaining a good deal of that aroma, which is fascinating, and it's changing even more now. That peanut quality is still there for me, so that's kind of an oak element that's probably present. So I was pretty dead set and comfortable on an idea of Dolcetto to start with, and I thought Carignan, Senso, maybe southern France for a second as we were smelling the nose, and then went back to Dolcetto, and happy with an idea like Sagrantino. I've seen Tony poking around in sort of a Zino Mavro Grecian world, and so I'm not playing the wine, I'm more playing what Tony was looking at one point, so maybe something Grecian like that. But then I like South Africa quite a bit too. I don't know that I'm comfortable going Pinotage, but Pinotage is a really nice way to kind of bring things together, that sinewy tannin, some of that rusticity. You got Pinot Noir, so some of that cherry note, some of that elegance. You get the structure. It's not full bodied, it's medium bodied. So if you were to make a guess of Pinotage, I think that'd be an amazing one. And I have tried a few that don't have a full-on kind of burnt rubber sort of smell, but there was that burnt citrus element. And now I'm searching for it, and so it's not fair, but there's like a little bit of a balloon kind of quality. Kathy's going to stick with Montepulciano or maybe Sagrantino. Yeah, if I ventured Sagrantino as a guess, it would be because it was a guess. I've had maybe one or two, but I don't have a reference point or an actual profile that I remember or can recall. So I don't have a real clear sense on how to guess that grape varietal. So. All right, final guesses, folks. Where do you put it? What's your vintage range? I think it's pretty youthful. Let's say 2 to 4 years. So maybe just in the middle of that, and kind of give it a 2018. 2018. I was definitely more in Italy to begin with. Should I stay there and go with the gut? Should I jump with all of you, or jump with the suggestion of South Africa? Kathy is sharing that she met a couple of tasters at Glen Manor on Saturday, and she was getting sassed. So, are you holding back this evening because you got a little talking to at Glen Manor, Kathy? But you've been doing really well. So, I've shared with folks that your husband opens the wine before he leaves, and you don't get access to it. So, you're just a good taster. You've been tasting for a long time. I like Susan's guess, Pinotage. Initial place in her brain was Pinot Noir, and so Pinotage kind of helps with that. 2018. Kevin's saying Italian 18. Kimberly is who met Kathy. That's very cool. And thank you, Jeff. Yeah, Pinotage doesn't have the chocolate notes. Petite Syrah. I don't know about, I think you'd get more purplish color and a little bit more fleshiness too, Jan, but that's a really interesting idea. There's a Syrah-like note with the black pepper and with that kind of cocoa quality, and so I think Shiraz is a really good guess there too. But there's just this medicinal element here that is super pronounced. So yeah, I'm gonna go with something like Sagrantino. I like that idea. 2018, Italy. But I'm less sure of that than in several weeks past. So Swanbergs are Australian Shiraz 18. If I was going to go to Australia, I would be out of the Barossa Valley and somewhere else, maybe McLaren Vale or something like that. That's just a tiny bit cooler. Maybe some stem inclusion to give you some of that stemminess and some of that tannin element. That'd be a really cool guess too. South Africa, I think Pinotage has a cool guess. Maybe Syrah from Pinotage. Or sorry, Syrah from South Africa, excuse me. You could have that element there too. So I think we've got a few profiles that work, at least, to get you points in this game. And it's unique enough wine that I don't see often enough to be able to identify clearly. So McCarty's are with me on a Sagrantino 18, or I'm really more with them because she called it earlier. So this is Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. Way to go, Kathy. 2019. Yeah, so from Abruzzo, from the center part of Italy. So this got less age than even I thought, called Luca. So Montepulciano showing us some definite tannin structure and lots and lots of that herbal quality. It's a pretty neat wine. That's fun. And they peeled off the label and the capsule and everything else to make sure we didn't get any clues from that. But this wine's a baby. I think this wine has years and years to go, but it is so enjoyable right off the bat on the nose that, gosh, it's still giving, This was a wine that I would really love to have with some kind of red wine braised element, so you could take some of that tannin and soften it a little bit, and then you could put a whole host of herbs and things in it. This would also be a really fun wine, kind of, wouldn't it, for Thanksgiving, with sort of sage stuffing and cranberry, and yes, this would be fun with a cigar. It could hold up, I think, to a lot of the quality of the cigar. And I like things with high acid in cigar. I think that helps just to kind of, one, clear out a little bit of the smoke that lingers on the palate, but I enjoy the experience of high acidity in a cigar. That would be fun. So Gary Pesch, a friend of ours and owner of Old Virginia Tobacco, you might enjoy this one, Gary, with a cigar too if you're watching, or I'll mention that to you. Jeff, yeah, this is for sure a tricker. I mean, this is a good wine that takes you in a couple places, and that's not a bad thing. This is, from a blind tasting context, this is a wine that maybe you get, maybe you don't, but you certainly learn a little bit more about, and it helps to take you to different places. Whereas some wines were just like, nope, that's where we're going, that's it, we know it, and that reinforces what you know. This one broadens what you know, and that's pretty cool. So, really cool, folks. I'm just going to sit here and continue to smell this. No, actually, I have to go back to work. So, cheers to all of you. I will miss you next week as Tony revolves into the seat, and it's a fun one. I hope to hear from all of you and hope you let me know what you think of it. But it was a really tasty white that I was excited to be able to share. And if I keep talking, I'll give any more away, and I can't do that. I get excited about special surprises, so I'm going to be quiet there and just wish all of you well. Have a great week or two. If I don't see you, some of you at least, before then, I'll rendezvous with you back as we work on another tasting pick from Tony. So cheers, everybody.